While at a rally in New Hampshire Friday, Donald Trump praised the FBI, saying it might not be as rigged as I thought.
Hillary Clinton's corruption is on a scale we have never seen before. We must not let her take her criminal scheme into the Oval Office. I have great respect for the fact that the FBI and the Department of Justice are now willing to have the courage to right the horrible mistake that they made.
Shortly after Hillary Clinton held her news conference, I spoke with our Major Garrett, who's on the trail with Donald Trump.
Right now, this is all about political positioning and political pivoting. And it is a bit neck-snapping for those of us who've watched this play out day by day by day, sometimes hour by hour. Because up until this morning, when he was taping an interview with Fox News' Bret Baier, Donald Trump was still on his relentless criticism of the FBI's original investigation. Then, lo and behold, this letter drops with Jason Chaffetz and the United States House of Representatives saying the case has been reopened, and suddenly the FBI is golden again. Similarly, Hillary Clinton has gone through a complete 180 in her orientation to this. So it's all about politics right now because the legal issues haven't been clarified, and they may not be sorted out in time for this election. So it may all be a political argument. Now, in the main, it's worth remembering this will be for today and probably this weekend a net plus for Donald Trump, because it will provide some measure of vindication for his criticism of the FBI investigation. He'll say, look, just because I criticize the FBI investigation doesn't mean I can't compliment them now for going back and looking at something. He can live in that terrain pretty comfortably. But the longer this plays out, and if the FBI does not produce any more facts to buttress what it's looking for, or at least suggest what it's looking for, the Hillary Clinton campaign, I guarantee you, will be more and more aggressive, not only in its own words, but with probably sympathetic super PAC advertisements and other things saying, hey, this is the FBI interfering in a conversation that should not be interfered with this close to an election. And that political jousting will continue.
Major, could this change the way the Trump campaign is approaching their barnstorming over the next couple of days? If they see an opportunity here, Mike Pence has talked about bringing Republicans back into the fold. Utah is in jeopardy in according to some polls. Could they all of a sudden change the direction of where they're going and maybe pour a little more money into Utah? Maybe Donald Trump visits Utah and some of these other places, Arizona, Georgia, or do you think they're going to continue on the track that they've been doing?
Well, first of all, there is no real predictable track. The Trump campaign makes its scheduling decisions at the very last minute. We usually don't find out where they're going with any more than a day and a half advance notice, much different than Hillary Clinton, who plots out her strategy much more methodically. For example, just 2 hours ago, the Clinton campaign released a statement saying that she would be in Arizona on Wednesday in Phoenix, because they believe now, the Clinton campaign does, it can win Arizona, a state that hasn't gone Republican in many, many decades. So the Clinton campaign is responding to a different battlefield. The Donald Trump campaign has to live with the reality that it sees, which is, at best, in several battleground states, it's drawn even. But it's nowhere is it ahead, so it can't enlarge its map. It's got to stick with the same battleground states. New Hampshire, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, a place like Iowa. It can't enlarge its own map. It's got to stick with the same narrow one it always has, because it's not ahead yet in any of those places. And until it is, it really can't change its scheduling or its approach to the map that's right before it.
Major, I know you've got to run, so I want to ask you one last question before we go back to Steve. A Democratic strategist told me earlier today that it would be very difficult for Donald Trump between now and Election Day to only talk about this, to keep that in the news, in the headlines. Now, some others will say, well, look, the media and everybody else kept talking about the sex scandals of Donald Trump, partly because he was bringing it up. But is this something that he can sustain for 11 days?
Well, I think today is an interesting example of his approach. He was much more circumspect in his remarks, talked about it at the top and said, you know, the rest of my speech is probably boring in comparison to this, but let me go through it anyway. And he was pretty disciplined about driving his message for change, economic revitalization, a very new approach to free trade, meaning much more skeptical one, stronger national defense, much tougher on immigration. So, at least for today, Trump had a pretty disciplined 1-2 punch on this. Talk about this development with Hillary Clinton, make mention that he's pleased with it, say it vindicates his long-standing criticism, and then go with his central message about change and economic revitalization and the rest. And if he stays in that lane, and it is, as we keep saying, the biggest if around Donald Trump, if he can stay with one particular approach for any given period of time, it may be useful and effective.
All right, Major Garrett reporting to us tonight from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Major, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Sure.